So I got around to watching No Time to Die because my folks rented it on Amazon Prime Video, and I don't rent movies a la carte these days, or buy tickets or any of that matter. Hey, I don't make the rules. And you know what? I think that the 2-year delay in this did it some good. And in some ways, it was actually better than I expected, but in a lot of ways worse. At either rate, here's a few things you may have missed.
Vaughan Jog Vlog.
But before we get into that, check out my friends over at calderalab.com. Their clinically proven skincare line is the best in the league. Check out the Good Serum, the Clean Slate Facial Cleanser, the Base Layer Moisturizer, and this mask known as the Deep. And you can use my promo code FRY15 to save 15% at checkout. The movie starts off with young moon-faced gal he's been hanging out with for a couple movies now. You know, the one who's at the center of everything. Well, this is her flashback. A killer wearing a mask goes into her house, shoots her mom, she shoots him, tries to get away, falls under some CGI ice, gets rescued, I guess, and not kidnapped. I don't really understand, but it's just weird to think we're watching a James Bond movie and anybody's having a flashback. It's not James Bond, but instead it's James Bond's girl. And has he retired again? They can't seem to decide if Daniel Craig's version of James Bond is becoming a 00 and retiring, or he's getting used to being a 00 and retiring, going missing and retiring. He's retired 3 or 4 times now in like 5 movies. So he's out on a little trip with his gal, but Bond wants to visit the tomb of Vesper Lynd, who conveniently enough has a photograph marking her there in case the audience forgot what she looked like. Oh, but it was a trap. The tomb is blown up by Spectre, and they must have assumed James Bond would survive this explosion, and that there'd be an ensuing car chase because they had a shepherd on call to block the road. Isn't that convenient? Funny enough, Bond blames his girl for this. His plot armor protected DB5 does what it can. They get away, but he sends her off, says, I'm never going to see you again. You get on the train. I'm not really sure if I want to totally blame you for selling me out. I think you did, but I'm not totally convinced, but goodbye. 5 years later, a deadly virus, more on that later, is taken from a lab along with this kind of bumbling scientist. The CIA comes to visit Bond. His old pal, Felix Leiter, kind of gets him involved here. They need to recover this guy, but at the same time, MI6 does as well, and we meet the new 007, played by Captain Marvel's wing girl. Now, I'm going to say a few things here. This gal, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I have a suspicion that she made as many as 4 contributions to the final script. I think a lot of it actually got scrapped sometime between the 2 years this movie had to sit on the shelf, and fan backlash ensued because we had to talk about the patriarchy when hyping up the film. One of those things being this kind of sassy new 007. It's not James Bond's been replaced, his designation's been replaced. I can kind of see them not having a number retired. Understandable. But the digs she puts in on James Bond, he gives them back. Oh, that must feel bad for you. Oh, and then, but he gets invited to the meeting with him. Oh, you must feel left out, or whatever he said, right? And I like to think tossing that visitor badge into the bin is similar to the classic hat on the coat rack toss. Then there's this CIA contact for Bond. Is it Ana de Armas? Is she supposed to be American or not? Because her accent's kind of coming and going, but she's got this bumbling sort of girl spy thing going, and she also gets to reject James Bond, like, weirdly enough is trying to undress him and then be like, oh, I'm sorry, you're too old for me. The CIA also has a fanboy, and let's not forget the throwaway line in which we have Q going on a date with a guy. So quick, my mom didn't even pick up on it. And neither will those regimes that control the foreign markets. So Bond actually gets put into this trap, a Spectre party that is going to have him assassinated with this engineered virus, we're still going to call it that. Only it doesn't get James Bond. It takes out all of Spectre. None of them got away? Really? Oh, well, you're saying one did, Blofeld. Well, he's in this Ultramax prison, and the only person that can talk to him is, you guessed it, Miss Swan, ex-Bond. What do we want to call her? I'm going to call her Miss Swan, for the hell of it. Well, she finally meets our big bad dad of the movie, Rami Malek, who went to the school of, I read an article that said that Anthony Hopkins didn't blink in Sounds of the Lambs, so that's what I'm gonna do. That's my big contribution. Make a weird grin and not blink. This guy, I think his name's Safin. He's so unforgettable. I literally just watched this movie. I can't remember anything about it. Oh man, is he the most forgettable Bond villain? It's weird because until Daniel Craig showed up, we didn't have that forgettable of Bond villains. So Safin gets Swan to kind of wash her hands with the bio agent, and if she comes into contact with Blofeld, it'll take him out right quick. But she kind of fidgets about, gets some of this on James Bond. He does a little bit of enhanced interrogation, and it takes out Blofeld. I halfway expect this is so that we don't have to explain to the audience how the hell it was Blofeld was able to manage a party from this prison. We just say there's a bionic eye he has control of, and then we move on to our next plot hole. Case in point, I am now having to rewind to talk about the death of Felix. Yeah, he got betrayed by the fanboy and gets shot and kind of drowns, sort of. Oh, but James Bond is sealed in the sinking boat, but he just opens the door that he couldn't open earlier. Not a nifty gadget escape, nope. Just, we have to find some way for him to get out, and this was the convenient way to do it. James Bond meets up with Swan at her place and meets her kid, who is clearly James Bond's daughter. I actually really like this point. It seems as though James Bond shouldn't be shooting blanks. He should have some kids to bounce into every once in a while, right? It's about time James Bond had a daughter. Did he need the world's quietest, most well-behaved 4-year-old? Well, Safin's guys are on to Bond. It's really weird because not 007 over here was supposed to be tracking down the fanboy, and she is incompetent, so instead he got to Bond and Swan and daughter first. But that plot armor protected Toyota, man, it flips 2 Range Rovers and doesn't take a single dent. And you know what's really strange is the Aston Martin's represented here. We have the DB5 we've seen in some other Craig stuff, though it was spec'd as was in Goldfinger. Now we got this, is it a DBS or they call it a DBVA? It's not a car I don't think Bond ever actually had, and if it is, it's kind of like what I think Dalton had. I don't know why this Daniel Craig Bond has it when it seems like we don't know if we want to separate this from the rest of the series or not. As I always thought, Judi Dench being Pierce Brosnan's Bond boss made it seem like this wasn't a straight reboot, but now we're really picking and choosing what elements. So if I had to call this timeline anything, it's hypocrisy. I look in the hallway over here. Okay, we have Judi Dench's portrait, past M's. Now way over here, we got one that was an M for Moore and Dalton. How do you explain this? And the real way you explain it is you don't. You just go with it. So it's whatever reality they want it to be. Swan fails to take the guns off anybody she shoots, so her and her daughter get captured, and Bond has to go after them. All the while, James is essentially brought back to 00 status again, gets his 007 designation back so that the new 007 over here actually doesn't seem that awful. Again, I think they trimmed out all of her anti-patriarchy stuff. He receives a watch, which has an EMP feature. Now, mind you, the interesting thing here is that we get a good kill line out of it, okay? Because he ends up using this on essentially the dragon of the movie. The guy with the electronic eye blows it up, and he's got like the nice little line, and I liked that. However, this guy Safin, he's got this island where they make Spectres poison. Yeah, they've been poisoning people for movies now. It's got to come from somewhere. I kind of like that we're exploring this. But it has to be infiltrated by Bond and new 007. And how do they go about this? They have a fancy CGI plane, a glider, and it goes underwater, and then they're going to go infiltrate the base, okay? Does this start to sound a little bit like Metal Gear? Because underwater infiltration of a base, and the poison I mentioned here, it's not really a bioagent, it's Fox dye from Metal Gear. It's nanobots programmed to take out specific people. As a matter of fact, I had never even heard of nanobots until Metal Gear Solid in 1998. And that EMP watch Bond has, that should be the way to clear them the nanobots. But instead, Q just says, oh yeah, there's nothing that can be done. That's it. We're not really exploring that plot thread. We just say it's impossible. They're with you forever. Strange moments occur here. The bad guy walks off with the daughter, separates from the mom. Not 007. She captures the scientist dude, and he gives some talk about, I could have your whole race removed from the earth, so she kills him. Weird thing to brag in the middle of a battle where you should have died several times, but everybody wants to protect you. And things really start to get more haphazard because the daughter just leaves the villain. You would think, okay, this is a hostage. No, hey, you can leave if you want. Okay, cool. Because that was the most convenient way for the plot to get the daughter back to the mom. And it's not the only really odd occurrence here. Ana de Armas, you expect to see her again, because she's kind of being made up to be a star. You expect her to come back and be working for the villain. That there'd be a twist, something bigger with her character. They even tease the Aston Martin Valkyrie sitting. No one drives it. As our heroes make their way through the compound, we hear familiar music. Was it a good idea letting Hans Zimmer do the score? I don't think so, because a lot of this doesn't sound like James Bond. It sounds like Black Rain and Batman Begins. I'm not the only one saying so. James lets not 007 take mom and daughter off to safety. He has to work the super convenient missile silo doors that allow all the grounds to be carpet bombed, right? So gets that in order, and what do you know, the doors are closing again. So I gotta make my way over there. Oh no, I'm getting shot, but getting shot doesn't do a whole lot. Have to have a tiny little fight here with anemic Malek, who breaks something over his face, scratches him a bit, and says, now you can never see your daughter or child. I'm going to tell you about all this. He was fumbling with her hair earlier, and there's some plausibility here, but it's weird to think that not only did he infect Bond with the nanobots, right? Like some new nanobots that are specifically designed to take out his daughter and wife, girlfriend, Miss Swan. James Bond believes him. And so after a quick execution, gets on comms and just says goodbye to everybody. Yeah, it is time for a heroic sacrifice moment here. The missiles are coming in, and James Bond has no way to get the nanobots off him, so he may as well just let it end here, right? You know, that EMP watch probably could have come in handy. Q doesn't seem to give a shit. They're no concern to quarantine him and work out a solution, and it kind of looks like there's a lot of places on this island one could have hid. I mean, Nicolas Cage took it harder in The Rock and walked away. But we're led to believe this is the end of James Bond, or Daniel Craig as James Bond, or whatever weird continuity we are going with here, and what feels like fan fiction with, you know, the mass character die-off. So they pour one out over at MI6 in memory of James. Aha, but it says James Bond will return, so are we supposed to care? It's weird. You know, it seemed like there was something to get invested in stories back in the day, but ever since superheroes really took over the box office, and then we have reboots all over the place, people returning from the dead, it kind of just seems like none of it matters. So did the Daniel Craig films resonate with you? Do you care that he didn't make it out alive, presumably? Or will you forget about it altogether when the next guy comes in? I mean, there's just so much forgettable here. I forgot to mention the Billie Eilish. Is it her theme song at the start that sounds just like most of these Daniel Craig Bond films? And oh, look, it's Sands of Time theme. Okay, whatever. I give No Time to Die 2.5 out of 4 stars.
You just watched a video from my son. He's about 40 and lives in my basement, ladies. So subscribe her and notify the bell for ringing. Okay, I said what you wanted me to say. Now do the goddamn dishes.